Welcome to Lahana High School's Tigers Talking on the Prairie. This is just an experiment that my senior English class is doing. They're looking at their writing, they're talking about the process, and then sharing their written work. It's an effort to expand our audiences, to find a real-world audience. It's an opportunity for us to get out there on the internet and shape the world. So we hope you enjoy this Tigers Talking on the Prairie.
Hi, I'm Nichelle Grabow, currently a senior at Lahana High School, graduating class of 2014.
Hi, I'm Dino, Lovato, and I am also a senior at Lahana High School.
Hi, I'm Jocelyn, Castaneda, and we're gonna share our honors English for narrative essay.
So there was a long process we had to do before we wrote our essays. First, we looked at examples of narrative essays.
And this was kind of helpful because it gave us a layout of how we could do our own essay.
After that, we picked our own topic, and then we came up with the title, and then did a writer's workshop.
Some of us didn't come up with the topic till later, but that was okay.
We wrote our first draft.
Then it was evaluated by a peer.
Based on the feedback from our peers, we were able to write our second draft.
Then we turned our second draft into Criterion.
Criterion was able to point out our mistakes that our peers had missed.
After correcting Criterion's mistakes, we submitted our final draft to turnitin.com.
The one that almost got away. Erg! The sound was deafening as our train, the 4 Southwest Chief, pulled into the Kansas City train station. Our train conductor had just told us that we had 30 to 40 minutes to wait till we had to board our next train. So as my boyfriend Corey and I got off of our train, we weren't in too much of a rush to find the 313 Missouri River Runner, the second train we had to board. Well, within 10 minutes of being off and just stretching our legs, a train attendant came up to the both of us saying the Missouri River Runner was ready to board and that we would be leaving in 10 minutes. Was there some older generation train and the Southwest Chief, the one we had just gotten off? Where was our train that we had to be on in 10 minutes? The train that was bringing us across yet another state line so that we could reach our final destination, St. Louis, Missouri. We started to get pretty frantic, and all I could think about was what my mom had told me a day earlier when we had left our home in Colorado. I could see her nervous face as she was telling her oldest and only daughter goodbye. Traveling alone by the train for the first time wasn't going to be easy, and in my head all I could hear was, my mother was beyond right. Now I've traveled across state lines before, either driving with my parents or even alone on a plane, but that was easy. My parents were with me when we drove, and when you flew, all you had to do was get on your plane, get off, and you even had a flight attendant that would check up on you the entire time. There wasn't a whole lot that you could mess up. Right now I was alone, a state away, only accompanied by my boyfriend who had never even been on a train his entire life. But I knew it wasn't time to freak. If I started to freak out, I wouldn't get anything figured out. I decided that I would go up to the information desk that was located on top of this 2-story flight of stairs. I was nervous as I climbed the wet metal stairs that led up to the information desk. It felt like I was climbing Everest all by myself as Corey waited downstairs with all of our luggage. Once I finally reached the top, I discovered that the information desk was almost 2 football fields away from me down a long corridor. I jogged a little as I headed toward the info desk, but halfway down my phone went off. I looked down at my phone and saw it was Corey calling. I answered, puzzled as to why he was calling since I had only left him a couple minutes earlier. As soon as I answered, he yelled into the phone, "Our train is here, and they are boarding right now." I couldn't believe it. I was probably almost a block and a half away from where I had to board the train. I turned around and started running back to the train platform, but people who had just gotten off the train and were heading the opposite way of me were making it hard to get down there fast. Once I finally got to the stairs, I realized with the stairs being so narrow and slick, people were going up or down them one at a time. And of course, it was my luck that there was a line of almost 40 people slowly and painfully making their way up, blocking me from where I needed to be. All I could think was that I was going to be left behind in a state where I knew no one and would have no way to get back home. After a few minutes of standing there helplessly waiting for the line of people to end, I think I almost gave up. I walked away from the stairs and stared down the balcony to the train platform below, with tears in my eye. I could see my boyfriend looking around frantically for me as he loaded our luggage into the train. I could hear the conductor yell the last boarding call, and I was ready to say goodbye to my only way of getting home and the only person I knew. Dang those stupid stairs, was all I could think. I glanced over, and sure enough, there were still people climbing up. One of the people who had just reached the top was an elderly woman who was trying to balance walking up the stairs and still use her cane. Thoughts odd, I remember thinking to myself, she should be using the elevator. Oh my God, how could I forget the elevator? All train stations had to have elevators to help people that needed assistance and couldn't take the stairs. I looked frantically around, and sure enough, hidden around the corner was the elevator doors. Doubt and joy. I got in the elevator in a rush, and it felt like it flew me down the 2 stories back down to the train platform. As soon as the doors opened, I ran the last couple of yards to the train. I reached it in time as the conductor was closing the doors. He told me how lucky I was, being that they had just left a couple passengers just the other day. I found my way to my seat and sat down, feeling numb and in shock. It took a couple minutes for my boyfriend to realize that I was on the train, as he was having a frantic conversation with one of the conductors, explaining that I was still outside and we couldn't leave. When he finally seen me, I could see the look of relief wash over his face. I was safe, we were on the right train, and our adventure continued. And thankfully it did, without any too big complications.
Joys of driving. Fall is the most beautiful time of the year. That's also when my birthday is. I'm just one of those regular teens that can't wait to get behind the wheel of a car when you turn 16. Driving with my mom and my dad was no sweat, but the thought of me driving with an instructor, someone who could catch my every move and all my mistakes, was kind of freaking me out. I live in Lahaina, Colorado, and some of you may know it isn't the biggest town in the state. It's a small community. So when it comes to driving, it wasn't that bad. There really wasn't any traffic or rush hour. I say this place is a perfect place to start driving. Since I was about 11 or 12, my parents started teaching me how to drive. They would always take me out on the country back roads and explain to me how driving is a state of being an adult and how it comes with responsibility. Then I learned how to use all the controls in the car, like how to start the car and how to put it in gear. I also learned how to work the windshield wipers, blinkers, and hazards. They also taught me never to mess with the radio while I was driving, to always change the station before the car is moving, because I should always be focused on the road and nothing else. As it became older and older, I found myself driving more and more. Then finally, on my 15th birthday, I went to go take my permit test, and I passed. That night was my birthday party, and that's when I got the best birthday present I could ask for. After my party was almost over, I started to open my presents, and the card that my parents gave me came with this little box. I opened it, and it had a note in it. It read, "Happy birthday, son." As I unfolded the paper, I found a key that was folded with the paper. I was in a state of shock. I couldn't believe that I had a car key in my hand, and that it was mine. I ran out to see if anything was in the driveway, and sure enough, there was a bright white Jeep Cherokee with my name on it. I was so glad and happy. I ran up to my parents and gave them a big hug. Then my mom looks at me and says, "Treat this as you would have treated my car." That year really flew by. Then as the summer ended, I was excited to finally get my license. I was studying every day, and I would go out and drive with my parents just to make sure that I drove good and that I used all my signals and my mirrors. As the days started to count down, I was getting more and more nervous. My mom just told me to take a deep breath and that I should be fine. Finally, the day has come. I step into the DMV and took my seat. The man behind the desk looked really busy. He calls the next number. I get butterflies in my stomach as I look at my ticket. and I realized that it was my number. I got up with nothing on my mind. I walked up to his desk and told the man that I was there to take my driving test. He looks at me and grabs his clipboard and says, "All right, let's go." We walked out to the car and the teacher did a check of the vehicle. After we checked to see if the lights and all the turn signals worked, we merged onto Colorado. The car was quiet. All I did was write down everything on his clipboard. Then I turned down a residential street and we were driving down intersections. I was making sure that I looked both ways and that I was always looking in my mirrors. After that, we went onto the highway, which didn't take that long. I showed him that I could change lanes and pass cars. Soon after, we turned off onto Santa Fe. After that, we went back into the parking lot of the courthouse. Then we just sat there. A few seconds of silence, just his pen meeting the paper on the clipboard. The test took about 10 minutes. It was the waiting after to see if I passed. That was the scary part. When we walked inside and sat down, I waited for him to finish all the paperwork. As he called me back to his desk, he looked at me and said, "Congratulations, now you are a licensed driver." At that moment, I was so happy. I felt so relieved that I passed the test. Now I could drive myself to school. I could go out to eat for lunch. I had the adult responsibility that I knew that I had to keep when I got my license. From that day on, I knew my life would change. That is the freedom that comes with driving.
Spring break. Everything was turning green. Leaves were growing, the flowers were blooming, the air was cool and fresh. We knew spring was just around the corner, and that spring break was coming up. But there was one problem. What am I going to do? Of course, I didn't want to stay home all break long. I decided to go ask my mother. As I asked, she said, "Well, I think it is about time to go visit George's family." Well, I haven't met them just yet, plus it was something else than just staying home. So I said, yes, it'll be nice to go. A 16-hour trip could be worse, right? Everybody had started packing a week early, except me. Why didn't I? I just had no clue what to take, how much to take, or what to wear. So I waited till the last day. Bad idea. I know, but it all worked out in the end. That night, I could not sleep, which was horrible because we were leaving at 2 in the morning. I think I only got a few hours of sleep before I had to get up and get ready. Once everyone was ready, we started to head out. In the truck, we all found our own little space to snooze for another few hours. It was somewhat crowded, but no one cared as long as they were sleeping. As I laid there, all I could feel were the bumps and the rocks the vehicle was going through. It was uncomfortable, but as we went, I got used to it. The sun had started to shine, and I woke up. We stopped many places as our journey continued to pursue. We saw many different sights as though we were in a slideshow, from cannons to big plastic dinosaurs and teepees too. All of these sights led to our destination. We were so glad when we saw the long line of cars that had meant one thing. We were here. No more "Mom, when are we going to get there?" or "George, speed it up, we're bored," and so on. We were finally there. As we crossed the border, there is a sign of relief that we made it there safely. We drove up to George's mom's house and started unpacking. And of course, after all the hellos, hugs, and kisses, they were all so welcoming and couldn't wait to show us around. But that would have to wait because we were exhausted. The sun was shining more than ever, and we had to go enjoy it. Plus, it was just the perfect day for a nice stroll around the ocean. It took about an hour to get there, but gosh, it was worth it. The crystal blue water sparkled more than the stars at night. I could feel the sand in between my toes and smell the sea creatures that were cooking up. The sight was amazing, but sadly only lasted for a while, till next time we said and drove back home. After a long day at the beach, we ate dinner and off to bed we went. The next day held another unplanned trip. We headed out to the wonderful world of shopping. Everything was so much different. The stores, the people, the clothes were all something I will never forget. We had lunch at a small restaurant. The food was pretty tasty. One last stop, which was the candy shop. We started to stock up for when we came back home. We would have different candies than what we usually had. Our cart was full and the sun was starting to go down. With only a few days left, we decided it was time to explore the parks. The plants were beautiful, no way in comparing those. The way the trees were formed and the little shops they had to buy little stuff from. I took many pictures of it just so that I could cherish the view 1,000 miles away. Before we knew it, we had to head out. It was a blast being there, but it was time to go home. Another long 16 hours we had to overtake. After we got past the border, it was smooth sailing. And at last, we made it safely to our home.
This has been Tigers Talking on the Prairie, a senior English project of La Junta Junior and Senior High School located in La Junta, Colorado.